Hello and welcome to ISO 400. I am your host, Julius Motel. This week I'm talking with Thomas Hurst, photographer who worked for nearly 20 years as a photojournalist covering conflict situations in the 90s and 2000s. And he left that to become a pastor of a church. And in that time he had the idea for Cover Photo, which is an iPhone case that has a built-in prism, which essentially allows you to take a photo as though you were sending a text. And in this episode he tells us how exactly he got into war photography, what he learned, and what it was like to transition out of that and into becoming an inventor. And as always, our music is provided by Yuki Futami, a New York-based jazz musician. Thanks so much, and hope you enjoy. Welcome to ISO 400. Thank you for taking the time.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Of course. I want to start at the beginning. You're 21. It's 92. Bosnian War is happening. And I had read, and you had told me that you wanted to experience war, you wanted to witness it. So you grabbed the Nickermat, invented a paper and a position, and you had a letter all good to go, and you got over there and you got approved. What was it about war, and why was photography your ticket?
Yeah, so what was it about war? I don't know. I just grew up fascinated about war. It just seemed like from American pop culture that war was where boys turned into men, and it was a combination of sort of being lost at a sort of a young age, not knowing where I fit in, and not really knowing what my purpose was going to be. And, we seem to have lost in our culture elements of, rites of passage where there's this defining moment that we and whatnot. And so for me, I just, even at 21, I just, outwardly I understood what it meant to present myself as a man, but inwardly just felt the insecurities and, great self-conscious. Just didn't feel head that somehow going through war would either reveal that to me or or crush me. And so I just decided that's what I was going to go do. And war certainly will reveal things about you that you can't learn anywhere else.
Sure.
But the truth is, after all of my experiences overseas, but I didn't know that in 92, and I didn't know that at the age of 21.
Right.
And, and by accident. I mean, there wasn't, I needed some reason to be there, and journalist, with a camera seemed like a plausible story.
Yeah.
Certainly mercenary wasn't, certainly, aid person wasn't going to stand up. I didn't know any form of first aid at the time. So medic wasn't, so it just seemed like, journalist seemed like something I could pull off.
Okay. And it's hard enough for most of us to learn a skill in a regular setting. What was it like learning this sort of on the trial by fire, on the fly?
Sure. Yeah. One, that's always been how I've learned.
Okay.
I'm not, I have to try it and fail at it and touch it, and how I've learned. Photography, the only thing I knew about photography was that in the viewfinder of the essentially a sort of center range that I had to make my needle get to. And if I got the needle in there in the center, then I knew that I could take a picture. With the problem was, you can get the needle there at a sixth of a second at f/22, but it doesn't mean your picture's going to turn out.
Sure.
So that's about it. I mean, I did try to run a roll of film through the knicker mat the day before I left. I just went outside and took some pictures of some flowers and some potted plants. Tried to wind the film back into the canister after I'd gotten through the roll. I failed to realize that there was actually a release button underneath the camera.
Okay.
The little handle until the film ripped, and then I opened up the camera and exposed it all. So that was really the getting to Bosnia and into Sarajevo. So most of my pictures didn't turn out, and I maybe had them properly exposed, and they weren't anything. All they did was prove that I went. They weren't gonna blow the doors off anybody. That's for sure.
Yeah.
But it was what I needed to, get photojournalism under my skin. I mean, that's all I needed was just to do that. Once I realized that the camera, and I realized it right away. I mean, once I got there and started taking pictures, that the camera itself was a passport into anything. I was hooked. I mean, that's all I wanted to do. So
yeah. And how long did you spend there for your first trip? And if I remember, there was like an older journalist who kind of took you under his wing.
Yeah, John Downing, who's a wonderful retired now photographer out of London. He was working for the Daily Express. World in England, but the Queen knights you and you're Sir John Downing or Sir Elton John, or so he's one of those cats, very prestigious, very kind man. And he was there, and we met, and you're right, he did take me in under his wing, and just I think more than anything, man, I think he was young and dumb, and from his standpoint, he could probably keep me alive for a few weeks rather than let me kind of stumble around the city on my own, and who knows what would have happened. So it was great. I mean, if he needed something that I could help with, I took care of it, did it. I'm the guy who would run to the car and get the film, and if we needed more film, or if he needed another lens out of the trunk or something, But then I just would watch him work, and so if he took a picture, I took a picture, and it was just it was a great way to start out.
Yeah, and so what was it like? I can imagine going back home is quite the experience after being, say, in the Bosnian War, any war really. Like, what was that like going back home, and then what was your next step?
Yes, I don't know. I mean, there was a part of me, that felt like, that I had accomplished something, and returned home sort of, this victor and these stories to tell, and but at the same time, you couldn't wait to get back to doing it. And so, I could only enjoy it for so long. And then it was, okay, what do I have to do to get back there? Yeah, I mean, that's, the next step was, okay, I'm going to need a real camera, and where do I, where am I going to learn about this thing called photojournalism? Because, I go to a junior college right now, and all they have are, a bunch of stoners taking pictures of, cats and stuff, and I'm bringing in pictures of dead bodies. I don't think anybody really knew what to do with me. So,
yeah,
but I was on fire for photography and for news and for journalism, and I think I started working for the junior college paper, and I think trying to come up through the ranks like everybody else, but still waiting to jump into the mix every chance I could get.
Yeah. And I know you went into Bosnia saying you're a photojournalist because you had to in order to to get there. But when did you feel like 100% comfortable calling yourself that, like feeling it within, not just externally?
Yeah. I don't know. I'd probably say 96, 97.
Where
Started
were you?
in 92. In 93, pretty much a year later, and certainly looked more the part, but don't know that I was any the wiser, certainly not any of the more experienced in sort of how to really be safe and operate and do good work in those environments. And I ended up getting myself in a stupid situation where I went out by myself in the city when a lot of heavy fighting was going on.
And this was where?
This is in Bosnia, 93.
Bosnia,
The following,
93. Okay.
and I ended up, running into some Bosnian soldiers that were manning a sudden checkpoint in the city, and being by myself and clearly out of my element, they dragged me down an alley, and they wanted they wanted my bulletproof vest, and and I thought I'd be real smart and play dumb, and until one of them put a gun to my head. Yeah. I was like, I'm an idiot. I'm a total idiot. At which point I couldn't get the bulletproof vest off fast enough. And I remember I was just writing this story for another interview that I'm doing. And I remember getting it off and like getting it around one of these guys' just shoulders, just kind of draping it on his shoulders. And I was like, kind of like, wow, nice new suit. And wow, that really looks good on you. Just trying to alleviate the tension, and and they spent, I don't know, it felt like forever. Maybe it was 30 seconds, maybe it was 3 minutes, just amongst the 4 or 5 of them, just clearly talking about what to do with me now.
Sure.
And I just remember going, gosh, these guys could put a bullet in my young, stupid American wannabe journalist gets, shot by a, sniper, whatever they would want, whatever story they would want to tell, they could tell, because there was no one there to witness it. There was no one there to, say any different. And in the end, the truth is they just pushed me kind of back out onto the main street and, waved at me. Yeah. And, I remember one of them was like, I was like, what the hell is happening here? Yeah. But I just, decompressing through that situation. One, how stupid I was. And 2, just, really hitting home how, that it wasn't a game, yes. I was going to be, able to go home with some great stories and, whatever, make my dad proud or whatever it was I thought I was going to accomplish. And, all my buddies would think I was, awesome something. But the truth, I needed to learn photography and learn how to really be careful in those environments. And so in 93, I just told myself, I'm not going to cover another war conflict. I'm not leaving the country until I feel ready to, that my photography feels right, that my experience levels, better. And I didn't. In 96, I finally felt ready. And January 96, I went down to Haiti to cover the first democratic election between Aristide and Preval. And Preval had been elected to replace. So I went down there to cover that story, and it turned into a I was able to call Time Magazine and convince them to give me a shot doing something for them, and they gave me a contract gig, and I was, walked into some pretty intense situations and made some strong images, and they ran it and gave it good play, and
Nice.
and that's really when I felt like, okay, yeah, I'm ready to begin this. And that was 96 was a big year for me. I did a lot. I was still in college, but I was still, I was in Haiti that year. I was in Afghanistan that year. I was in Rwanda that year. It was really the year that propelled me into the rest of my career.
Yeah. And I imagine with like the incident in the alley with the bulletproof vest and others possibly, they shake you, they rattle you. And how did you develop ways to cope and decompress when you've come into those situations?
Yeah, I don't know if I ever really did. You just, I don't know. For the most part, you try to process it. I used to keep a really detailed, journal. I used to journal a lot on my trips, and
Sure. Yeah.
and that would be a way I would decompress. But then all of a sudden, I just found it so exhausting to journal out what I was experiencing, because it was like reliving it.
Sure.
And and a lot of it was just stuff that I just did not want to relive. I don't know. I think I'm still trying to sort out how all that has, impacted me. I know that, doing that stuff has, impacted me in certain ways that are negative, and that are, maybe even you're a lot more compassionate to people. You feel a lot less inclined to feel sorry for yourself when bad shit happens to you.
Yeah.
Because bad shit happens to everybody, and you're not entitled to anything different. And, but then there's a lot of, you hear about it, about the ones you can't forget, the ones that, the things that you see that don't ever leave you, the things that you see that, that stick to your dreams. And that's all really, really true. And, yeah. And so, not a lot of stuff that I'm proud of, but, a lot of sex, a lot of drugs, a lot of drinking, a lot of the, things that sort of, war photographers and photojournalists are sort of, thought of being a part of. It's almost, thought of as sort of badges of honor, and, sort of the image that all of, all of those cats sort of, can sometimes try to live up to.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of it is just, men and women, dudes, ladies trying to, process through.
Yeah.
Because the things you see there aren't, they're not things that you ever want to become accustomed to. And I think for me, one of the things that was really important to me was I never wanted to become one of those just, hardened photojournalists or journalists that just, everything is crap and everything sucks and everybody's a scumbag, and, they just become immune to, all of the garbage. They can't, feel anything. They're just sarcastic. And I never wanted to become that. So I was always more inclined to let things impact me. And I felt as if doing that added a sense of compassion that I had for the people that I was documenting. But at the same time, I do think it takes its toll on you.
Sure. Yeah, of course. Were there ever in all the conflict you've encountered in your career abroad, Were there any particular humanizing moments that kind of cut through the chaos?
There was something I experienced in Haiti when I was referring to that back in '96. There was a series of riots in the main slum in Port-au-Prince. There was a community leader that had been active about wanting to get gangs and drugs and whatnot out of the slums, and he was walking home one night. I'm sort of ad-libbing to the actual situation. I don't know I don't know all the details, but essentially he was murdered. And those that really cared about him and loved him took to the streets and rioted, and they went out and exacted their own justice. I mean, if they found somebody who was that they thought that was in the wrong, or doing things that were illegal or might have had something to do with this guy's death, they'd hack him to death with the machete and throw a tire on him and burn him. And it was several days of some pretty brutal stuff. And the day of this community leader's funeral, after they had buried him, somebody had pointed to somebody in the crowd and said, "Hey, that's a bad guy." And it was a young kid, I would say probably in his late teens, maybe early 20s. And he essentially, it's a long story, but essentially they beat this guy and knifed this guy to death. And I photographed the whole thing, and just at some points just inches away from this guy as he's getting murdered, and I didn't do anything. I didn't try to stop anybody. I didn't try to speak up. I mean, I think in part I'd never experienced anything like that before, so I couldn't perceive where it was building to. There were people during the situation that were actually trying, locals that were trying to actually protect this guy and have the police come over and arrest him so that he wouldn't get murdered. I mean, I was reacting. I wasn't intuitive enough to see that this was going to go down the way it did. And then when it went down the way it did, it just was so brutal that, there was, it was like an out-of-body experience. But I was able to photograph it, but I wasn't able to set my camera down and try to help at any level. And that had just a huge impact on me. It is the thing that I look back on, and if I could have done it differently, would have. And from that moment on, I just, the whole, I'm an observer journalist line is, I just decided that was not for me, that was just bullshit. And that, if I could help somebody, good or bad, if I could somehow help, I would at least try.
Yeah.
And so that had a huge impact on me. I mean, there's a lot of pictures, a lot of situations where I eventually just stopped taking pictures so that I could help somebody, get to a hospital, help somebody get some food, help somebody get some water, help somebody get on some transport so they can get their asses out of some really shitty situation. And I don't have any problem with that. I want to be a human first, not a journalist first. And so, but everywhere I went, I mean, I always loved being around the people. I always loved help where I could, how I could.
Yeah. Did you find at any point in your career that you were mentoring someone in the way that you had been mentored, like some scrappy young kid comes over and... Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I was able to do that as, I'm a big believer in trying to help lift up the next generation, trying to help, that next person get there. And so I've always tried to do as much mentoring and, helping as I can. And so I've seen some guys come up and they're
doing well, and they're, I don't believe you can take credit for them,
Sure. Yeah.
because eventually they get they got to make it or break it. I mean,
Yeah.
you can't do it all for them. But I've seen some guys get there and go on to be successful, and I just I just continue to believe in that. And so I had an almost 20-year career, and I for newspapers. I worked for magazines. I strung for wire services. I did it nationally, internationally.
Yeah.
Just a wealth of experience, and so I'm always looking for ways to share that in a way that is helpful.
Sure.
To people.
Yeah. And when did you, because you left photography as a career, when did you hit your threshold? And what was the transition out of that like?
What do you mean?
Well, you became a pastor.
Pastor.
Yeah. That whole that transition. So, like, what was the moment where you thought, all right, or if there wasn't, I mean, what was the?
I'm ready to make a move.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think it's. I don't know that there was. I mean, there was sort of the day you go into your boss's office after 10 years of working for him, and you sit down and go, "I'm out."
Yeah,
that's it. You just kind of drop the mic and walk out.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, I think for me, I always believed that that what we all do was going to help change the world. And sometimes the types of change that we want to see quickly, but they don't happen quickly. They happen really slowly, and slow change is really hard to see. You really have to be paying attention, right? It's almost like it's like you got to be almost tracking the data. It's like trying to lose weight. You never see the weight come off of you, but you bump into Danny from down the way, and you haven't seen him in a year, and he looks at you and he's like, "Shit, man, you lost 20 pounds." You don't feel like you necessarily lost 20 pounds, but you have, and so you take that same idea and you apply it to just the way that just the way that the world is so brutal. I mean, Burundi's back in the news. Burundi was in the news in '94. I mean, '96. I mean, you just kind of go, well, here we are again. But after a while, man, it just felt like, I don't know, probably year 15, a year, my, somewhat 20-year career. I mean, it was like, man, it feels like we're in a cul-de-sac. We just drive around and around and around, and I'm going to remember Burundi because I was paying attention to that in '94, but maybe nobody else was. So, as far as, they're concerned, something happening in Burundi is brand new to them. It's brand new news. It's, it doesn't come with all the history, but when I realized that it wasn't information that was going to really change human beings and human nature, I started asking myself, what does, if anything? And I think that's what led me to, start looking at, the different major world religions, and, put me on a trajectory to finding a faith that I really believe in. And oddly enough, I never expected to become a Christian. I never expected to church. I didn't like church. Didn't like major religions. Couldn't stand Christians. They all seemed like people I didn't want to hang out with. The same perceptions everybody has about Christians or any other faith. Stuck up, self-righteous, pretentious. Do-gooders. All of that, and a lot of that's true. But but a lot of it, there are, a lot of people within that faith that, have really been transformed. And I think for me, it was life transforming to start reading scripture, and then, analyzing it and assessing it and testing it. And, but it eventually led me to leave, photography. I mean, as a profession, but not as
of course,
not as a craft. Oddly enough, what year was it was it 2010? It was the earthquake in Haiti.
Yes.
And our church jumped on a private plane, and was able to get into Haiti literally days after the earthquake, when the only people that could get in were aid organizations and whatnot. And, and I went down there and was shooting and taking pictures, and put together this, helped put together this really great, I think, 3-minute video that our church ended up sending out to, tons of churches and, around the world. And I think we raised $1 million off this 3-minute video that I helped make. And it was just, and here I was back kind of using that skill set again.
Yeah.
And so, I but it's a pretty rough business.
I'm sure. Did you find that everything you had experienced and learned as a photographer, particularly with compassion and everything that comes with that, made you better suited to the role you took on as a pastor?
Yeah. I mean, I think I've always had a love for people. I mean, I just, I've always been fascinated by people, the complexities of them, the characteristics of them. My favorite places are airports, because I love to watch people. I love to just watch people engage and interact. And, airports are one of those very unique places where, regardless of, your socioeconomic level, you're coming into an airport to travel. And so there's a lot of clashes of culture, and, and people get stressed out in airports, and you see people, interact and respond to each other in pretty trippy ways. But yeah, I mean, in 20 years as a photojournalist, I mean, you've experienced so many different types of situations and settings and experiences, and, with good people and bad people, that there really isn't anything that you can't sit down and listen to and try to offer wisdom for. I think the skills I learned as a photojournalist, and how to engage with people and accept people, and really helped me to pastor the church I got to pastor.
Yeah. And was it during this time that you got the idea for cover, or was it after?
No, it was during this time. The idea for cover came through, just a personal crisis, a family crisis. My wife had been diagnosed with cancer, and so at the time we had 3 little boys at home. And my wife was pregnant with our 4th son, Samuel, and so, we got this, obviously out of the blue diagnosis, and it was, it was late stage 3 cancer, so it was real serious, and we just didn't know what was going to happen, and so, so cover was really born out of this idea of trying to just capture great images and videos of our kids without our kids realizing we were doing it, because, by the, even though they were, I think, 6, 4, and 1, they had all realized, kind of, once you lift the camera in front of your face, act like an idiot, and so, and my wife would call me up crying, because she would, here we are trying to, create these memories, so that, if my wife dies, my boys will have something to remember their mom by, and they're acting just like jackasses every time she lifts up the camera. So I was trying to come up with a way that so that she could shoot, that I could shoot images and videos that were just more subtle.
Sure.
And, I had been paying attention for a while to how people were, getting deeper and deeper into mobile photography.
Yeah.
And just watching the ways in which people shot. And I'd been thinking about, gosh, it just seems to be such a difficult way to take natural pictures, the way that you have to always hold your phone up, like, motivation to try to solve the problem. I mean, any motivation to try to solve that problem before my wife's diagnosis would really have been just for financial gain.
Sure.
And I've never operated like that. I mean, if you're a journalist,
you're not in it for the money.
You are not in it for the money, right? So money's never motivated me. So the type of motivation you need to take an idea and bring it to market.
Yeah.
I mean, it's grueling. And for me, if money's not my motivator, compassion for people and wanting to do right by people and do good for people, that's always been my motivation. And so, if cover was going to be something I created, it had to be rooted out of that, because it just wasn't there's just no way I would do it otherwise, So it was a great combination of having the history in photography to understand, how valuable it is to be subtle with your photography,
of course,
and just how powerful the images are that you can make when you are subtle, and then having tragedy motivation to get me to actually turn it into reality.
Yeah. And what was the drafting process like? How many prototypes did you go through? How did you arrive at that final design?
Yeah. I had a friend of mine who was really good at the church with just kind of fixing stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, well, if anybody can help me figure out how to make this thing, this guy can. And it turns out he was an engineer, and and so he worked on medical stuff that he and his other business partner had built a business on. So when I gave him the idea, Vision Remote is sort of our sort of beginning concept. I don't know, man. We probably went through 12, 15 different prototypes and different types of prisms and glass prisms first. And we prototyped everything on glass. And then we ended up going with a really high quality plastic that actually made the pictures better than what we were getting from glass, just because of the way we needed the prisms to be cut and given their size.
Right.
And the plastic was a lot more durable. If you had an inadvertent drop, and financially, the glass prisms were 10 times the price of plastic prisms. So it allowed us to keep the overall cost down to the consumer at the end of the day. So, but it took, I think I had the idea July 2012. And, we were delivering, our first Cover 5 photo cases for the iPhone 5S December of 2014. And it took a long time.
Yeah.
And, if neither one of us had day jobs and, we had $200,000 laying around, we could have knocked this out in, a few months, but that wasn't the case. And, in due time, it all came together, and now we're about to launch the 6 and already have that in manufacturing. And so it's taken off.
Very nice. What do you think it is that's made you so receptive to mobile photography? Just as a thing, because I know there are folks who don't take it so seriously or don't invest much in
Right.
it, but
Right.
you seem to have
No,
really embraced it
yeah.
and contributed to it. I mean, it's my favorite phone case by far.
Yeah.
Um,
It's there. I
yeah,
mean, man, you could be the greatest photographer. You could be James Knockway or Sebastian Salgado, or any of the historical greats, or the most prolific photographer right now. But if you don't have the camera and you don't have access, it doesn't matter.
right.
I could be Five Finger Freddy and be a total idiot, and if I got a phone and I'm present and I can take it out and take a picture, I'm better than you that day,
Sure.
and that's it. I mean, the smartphone is, to me, arguably the most powerful invention ever created, because it's always in our hands. It's always turned on. We freak out when we don't have it. We're addicted to them,
Yeah.
and there's so much that you can do. And, it just, I'll be honest, I get these guys every once in a while that'll ping me, and talk about, well, real street photography is, using a 35 millimeter camera, blah, 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 and I mean, it's all I could do not to want to just punch them in the mouth, because,
Yeah.
it's all it's ever been is a tool.
Yeah.
Photography, camera is a camera is a camera is a camera. Like, it's what you do with the tool. And, whether it's a phone, or whether it's a Leica, or whether it's, a Hasselblad, or whether it's, whatever, like a cardboard pinhole. Like, who cares? Like,
Yeah.
you had the tool, you knew what to do with it. And so, mobile photography is not going to take the place of, what people are doing with digital SLRs. And it's not going to take place of what people are doing with large formats. But to dismiss it is absolutely foolish. And, if you're serious about photography, I don't know how you can dismiss it, because your ability to get paid doing your job is becoming increasingly harder, because more people have these phones, and magazines and newspapers and all of the avenues by which you can get paid. Man, they're going to take the person who was there with the, look at the Time magazine out of Baltimore.
Yeah.
That cover.
That
was
a crazy cover.
Right. And I'm not saying that guy shot his stuff on iPhones, or, I think he was just shooting digital cameras. But the point is, that guy was an amateur.
Yeah.
It didn't have anything to do with, what kind of equipment that guy had. It didn't have anything to do with, what his name was, or who was representing him, or anything like that. The guy, a passion.
Yeah.
That's the industry.
Yeah.
And I love it. I mean, I just want to see great pictures.
No,
At the end of the day, that's it. Like, that's what I get excited about. I want to see people make great pictures.
Yeah.
Invent something that, is helping people do that. And, that's awesome.
Yeah. Have you ever, in the time since leaving photojournalism, have you ever thought of getting back into it, or is it something you're content with having done?
Man, I miss it. I miss it. I mean, I'd love to. Man, I had some opportunities. To go do some things, and I'd love to go shoot some serious hard news with cover and an iPhone.
Sure.
Shoot them with iPhones, but right now, I've got 4 kids.
Yeah.
9 from 9. My oldest will be 10 here in a few weeks, so 10 to 5 weeks.
Oh man.
Yeah. and it's not the gosh, I wouldn't ever go because I have kids thing. My wife she can't handle 4 kids. I can't handle 4 kids
of
without
course.
the other one being there. So, but time will tell. I used to get really, when I was in the business, I would get really jealous when I would see guys get assignments and shoot amazing pictures that I knew that I could shoot if I was just given the chance. I mean, it's just
Right.
a lot of selfish, why not me attitude. And, if I didn't win the award, I didn't want to know who did type stuff. I mean, just immature, and immature attitude. But now all of a sudden I'm in this position where I actually am getting to, provide people with something that may allow them to do amazing work. And I'm mature enough in my life now to go, man, that feels really good. Like, I don't need everybody to know that I invented it, but I love getting to know that I invented it and that this guy used it.
Yeah.
I love, the best part of my day is every morning I get up and look at Instagram and see how many people have posted pictures with the hashtag cover photo on it, and just go, that's cool. And I mean, to you thought it was important to take a picture of and post. Whether I want it on my wall or not, that's a different topic. But if I could help you take a picture, a better picture of your cat, and you want to use cover photo to do it, then that's awesome.
Yeah.
So, and I've got I got a big vision for it. I mean, we're going to do a lot more with this company than just make cases. I want there's a way for us to build this company and keep it, keep it running smart, keep it running lean, not allow it to get, fat and take revenue and turn it back into the photographic community.
Yeah.
I mean, I want to establish grants for kids that are going to college and trying to, get into the business. And, if we as a company can help them, leave college and not have as big a financial burden on them, then man, I want to do that. I want to help, I want to find, seasoned photographers who haven't had the opportunity or the financial means to work on an important project. I want to do that. I want to, I don't know. I got a huge vision for this puppy. So
yeah,
it ain't just about cases. It's really about, man, I want to pour into the community that's, that I've gotten to be a part of, and that's cared for me and been important to me for the vast majority of my life. I love photojournalism. I love photography. And I've got a great compassion for photographers because I understand what the burden is.
Yeah.
I know what the hurdles are. I know what the struggles are. I know how hard it is. I know how competitive it is.
Yeah.
And, 1,000, photographers in some way, shape, or form, man, I want to be about that.
No, I hear you. And I think that's fantastic as a young photographer myself. It's incredibly encouraging to hear that. Something I ask everyone in these interviews is if you could give one piece of advice to a photojournalist who's just starting out, what would it be?
Repeat the question one more time for me.
Sure. If you could give one piece of advice to a photojournalist who's just starting out, what would it be?
Man, this is gonna be one of those questions where I'm gonna lay awake in bed and like, oh, why didn't I say that? Yeah, stay humble. Honestly, just stay humble. Like that'll impact you. That idea, will impact you every, from literally every point of your career, from the time that you sit down with somebody to, do a portfolio review. If you can just stay humble in that and not allow your pride to get into that, then you'll actually hear what they have to say and not be worried about impressing them. If you see success or experience success, just, to remember that, you didn't get there on your own.
Sure.
That we're not just in a community to benefit ourselves. I mean, I really think it's photography is where it's at, and will go where it will go based on the people that care for it.
Mm-hmm.
And so care for it. Don't just take from it. Realize that it's a craft and an art and an honor to be a part of, and be willing to take that responsibility on and find a way to nurture it.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah, man. Thank you
so much for doing this. Thanks so much for watching. This has been ISO 400. If you'd like to see more of Thomas's work, you can go to thomashurst.com. And if you're curious about the cover photo, you can go to coverphoto.com. That's COVRPHOTO. And if you like what we do, please hit subscribe down below and share this with your friends. Thanks so much, and see you next time.